All right. Yay. Mike, you're fixing your hair every time. The last minute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week of Training Tuesday Live. It's Magnet Marketers, where our goal is always to help you become a magnet with your marketing versus being a bullhorn. And today we're super excited to dive in to the world and what the word is on iOS 14 and what it has to do with ads. I don't know if I should say super excited to dive in, but we're super excited at least to give you a heads up. And we have the perfect guy here to do that. That's Tony Christensen, celebrating his 1 year now anniversary with Now Marketing Group. Whoop, whoop. I need sound effects in here now for those kinds of things. But before we introduce Tony and all his ad awesomeness, a quick hello. If we've not met before, my name is Jessica Phillips with Now Marketing Group in the relationship marketing system. My personal mission is to help you love more, give more, and be more through the art of authentic relating and just using some relationship marketing to help brands do that better. And my awesome co-host, he's Mike Gingrich. He's the awesome co-host of Magnet Marketers and also the president of the web development and software firm Digital Hill Multimedia, published author extraordinaire 5 times over, triathlete, runner, a biker, and leading business blogger at MikeGingrich.com. How's it going, Mike?
Hey, doing well, and congratulations, Tony. I mean, look at that. We got you got to get that comment up there. Tony does anniversaries. Okay, so that's a good one to post.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Julia, right? Yeah, and why do we say Tony does anniversaries? Because Tony does ads. So we're playing on that. There we go. Yeah,
I love it.
1 year. What's it feel like, Tony? Time went fast.
It's really blown by. It's been crazy. We've gone through a lot, all of 2020, so yeah. And now it has grown a lot over that time too. So it's been a fun ride, a wild ride, and I'm excited for the future and kind of what we got going ahead too. So yeah.
Yeah. So you've never really been a part of Now outside of a pandemic.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I went to Social Media Week Lima in 2019, but yeah, it was more of a fan of Now before I joined the team and everything. And true. It's been pandemic employment for time.
That's the best kind of pandemic employment. Many people wish they could say the same. No, Tony's done an amazing job and truly is the ad expert with us, and honestly has extensive background in ads. I mean, Mike, I know you probably wanted to tell a little bit more about that, and maybe Tony, you can tell us a little bit about your background with ads as well, and how you've been keeping up with this iOS 14 as we start diving into some of the questions we have. But
yeah, sort of my background. I just really fell in love with. I went to social media marketing world, fell in love with advertising, marketing, all that stuff, and then ended up learning from an agency. Didn't work out. Ended up going to a different agency, which I loved. Ended up spending just tons of money, like up to millions of dollars a month on ads for different clients. One of our big ones back in the day was Black Rifle Coffee Company, which is a name I drop here and there, but very rarely. Most of the time I don't mention client names, but they were one of the big ones that were just doing incredible. They were like renting helicopters and like just doing nuts like stuff for their video, which was really exciting. But then ended up
spending your money. It's exciting,
like so fun. It's like,
help people make money without spending your own.
$6,000 a day on one ad. Sure, let's do it. It was just crazy, really fun to dive into. And then from that, I got into speaking and then just networking like crazy, and we'll get into that. But it's pretty much what you have to do to be an advertiser nowadays. Just meet as many other advertisers that are doing it and figure out what angles are working and what's not working. going on from there, and then meeting Jessica and kind of going out to Lima and falling in love with the team and everyone there, and then jumping over to Now Marketing and haven't looked back since, and just keep it going with ads and everything.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And that's the key. And as you said, we're going to touch on that today because ads are changing, but this is a pretty drastic one. And I know, Tony, just in our relationship together, of course, you mentioned how you came here a year ago. But even before that, we were kind of talking, I was trying to learn from you. And then when it got to a point where things were changing so much and so rapidly, I'm like, I need somebody else that does this, that can be way better at it than I. And that's the key, knowing what your limits are, I think, and knowing where to get information. So it's kind of a mix of that. And the change that we're talking about, so just diving in first to iOS 14. And by the way, if you're watching with us live or even in the replay, let us know, have you heard of this? And yes, it is an Apple update, but it's going beyond just the iOS 14 software update on your phone. It's what it has everything to do with you as a business as well as you as a consumer, because I think there's some things that will tie in here for you too, just how you are experiencing what's being presented in front of you. So Tony, if you had to explain what iOS 14 is to someone that may not have heard of it from a brand standpoint, how would you explain it?
I'd say take a seat and clear your schedule because we have a lot to go over. An easy, quick way to explain it is sort of how when you download an app and it asks you, will you give, us permission to use your camera or your microphone, that kind of thing. That's going to now happen for apps that share your data across websites. So we don't know the exact rollout date. I'm hearing it might be next week. I'm hearing it could be early spring. There's not a very clear date yet. But basically what's going to happen is there'll be a pop-up on your Facebook app that's going to say, do you want Facebook, which is the main app that people are talking about, you want them to keep sharing your data across websites or not? And basically, if you say no, it's going to change a lot of things, things like personalized ads. And then for the advertising perspective, it's going to change how you can target people, because obviously you're not going to be able to target those people as well as reporting is going to change. And there's going to be more data lags, I would say. So it's going to take longer to get information, and it's going to be a little bit more muddy going forward. So that's it, and as quick and concise as I can put it.
That was
good. I
mean,
we often think, right, that we often think of the apps as kind of independent, right? Well, I've got a Facebook app, so that's the Facebook world, and we kind of miss that there are layers, and iOS 14 is the operating system on the phone. You think you have an operating system on your computer, and so there's this layer that has, and Apple has, interest, awareness. They're wanting to allow people the choice of privacy in that, because there's been a lot of sharing across apps and those kind of things there. So we just don't think about it at times. We just think I'm using Facebook. What's this? How does this work? But there's a lot of interconnectivity and layers to actually when you open a Facebook app.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the apps out there too. I wouldn't say, and it's always Facebook, just because they've had a tough PR year just in general. So they're always sort of under attack in a lot of ways, but it will affect, and we can get into that too, but it will affect other apps too. It'll affect Snapchat, TikTok, Google even as well, and all these other apps that might be sharing information from websites, and they might have cookies and pixels and all that kind of stuff. So it's not just Facebook. Facebook's just, they're the heavy hitter in a lot of ways, especially with data. So they're the ones that are getting the most attention, and they're trying to show I think they're scared, honestly, on advertisers leaving and going to other platforms and whatnot too. So they're trying to help as much as they can. So they have to put a lot of awareness out there, which makes people think it's just Facebook.
Took out newspapers and stuff because, okay, so you as the brand, here's a way of looking at it and how I've tried to explain it to many clients that we're working with on what's to come. So when you're creating an ad on Facebook, because that is the most popular, and as you said, Tony, it's the one that gets brought up the most, but this will affect other advertising that you're doing. So you as an advertiser, when you go to create an ad on Facebook, and I'm talking about an ad, not a boost. So a boost is what's staying on Facebook and or Instagram or WhatsApp. But if you're creating an ad, your ad isn't just living within the Facebook network of families. It's living beyond within a plethora of apps first. So one, it could go out to the top 500 like apps that are out there, and meaning that your ad could be showing up on something else, even though it's created on Facebook, it's showing up there. So that's where the extended network of families are. However, what Facebook relies on in order to know where to put it, who to target, and how to respond as far as like reporting back data, and how you can smartly kind of change your ad to make sure that, okay, if somebody interacted in this amount of time, now we're going to do XYZ. That's all coming from the data that's feeding back into Facebook, the app. But what's happening is there's a war, if you will, in between the who owns data, I guess.
Yeah.
And Apple's trying to say, like, we want you to have privacy, you as the user, the consumer, we want you to be in control of your privacy. So we're going to allow you to kind of turn off tracking, if you will. But what they really mean is that we want to hold this data. And Facebook is saying, like, wait a minute, like, now if we don't have this data feeding back, what this happens to you as the brand that's running ads is you may not have as clear of data in as efficient of a way in order to see how to change your ads without potentially spending more or throwing away some dollars to target the wrong people. Is that a good way of kind of saying it in another way, Tony?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. Yeah, so it's like the strengths of a lot of these advertising platforms are getting limited in ways, like they're getting their hands held behind their back in some ways, because Facebook, for a lot of times, like advertisers love Facebook and Instagram and Google and YouTube because it's so clear, like, is this working? Is this not working? If you set it up right, I can see this made me $10,000, this made me $5,000, this brought me $300 leads or whatever. It's very clear. And that's where right now it's starting to get muddy again, sort of like back in the day, where now it's like we're back to billboards and not knowing really what's happening from that, or we have to ask
like
more
an arbitrary number. I think 10,000.
Yeah.
We're just going to go with 10,000 because that's the last number I seen. And I think three people were in the car with them when they drove past. So yeah, we're going to go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how a lot of it's kind of happening now is it's still going to be private, but it's more like they're calling them, I think, privacy sandboxes now. So it's like Facebook has their own little privacy sandbox. Google will have theirs. Apple kind of has more information for more people. But how it'll happen more, it's not like privacy, yes, is going away in a lot of ways, but Facebook and the different platforms are still going to be able to see what you're doing on their platform. So if I like a page and comment on things that involve puppies and dogs, they're going to know that I still like puppies and dogs. It's more of when I go to a website and look at stuff, that's going to be kind of blocked now from Facebook knowing it as much as what it was before. So they might not know that I like, looking at certain clothes or a certain brand or something like that, or all those kind of dynamic remarketing ads that you can do, where if I look at a certain shirt, then I see that shirt on Facebook. That's going to get a lot harder to do going forward.
Harder to do for Facebook, not necessarily for Apple, because that's really what I think it is. It's like, who wants to control the data, right? Like, and I even know Google's going to be getting into this, but that's a whole other thing. But it's like Apple is saying, oh, we want to give you privacy, but like they're still trying to have a money grab on what, in my opinion, on what ads are showing up, because they get a percentage of the ad spend from like people that are using apps. Maybe explain that a little bit too.
Yeah, and that's what some people are saying. It's kind of cutting into it. Like, do they really actually care about privacy? Does Facebook actually care about small businesses? Like, there's all this kind of conversations too. But yeah, Apple has a pretty big tax and a fairly big monopoly with their own app store, because it's like you have to pay. I think it's a 30% tax. It's a very high. It's similar to like Amazon with their sellers too, where you're paying 30% of everything that you make, but kind of the loophole, if you want to look at it that way or whatnot, of these apps that are doing things externally is they're not paying anything with all the revenue that they're making. It's there's minor cases where if I do like a Facebook event, I think Apple takes some of that money, but a lot of people aren't doing that as much. But all of the revenue, all of the real money that these companies are making is from advertising, where Apple's, it's mainly from the App Store and profits they're getting there. So yeah, it cuts into a lot of it. So yeah.
It's a significant change for businesses that have been running Facebook ads, I think, and that they need to be aware of. And I think it just kind of opens up this door of that battle that's kind of going on for the data, as Jessica said, for the control of the data, and because that data is money, and yet so that's kind of like this bigger battle kind of going on. And then what it comes down to, though, for the small medium-sized business then is that hey, they got to be aware of this, because there could be some changes, some things that they could do before more easily, or that the performance of ads that could be impacted. And so you want to be aware of that if you're spending dollars.
Yeah. And we can talk a little bit about the changes, because there are quite a bit now. And it's sad, because as much as like these companies like Facebook says they care about small businesses, and I think that is a good angle, because it is going to get a lot harder for small businesses to run ads and know how to do them successfully, sadly. So I'm almost at a perspective now, and I've heard a lot of other media buyers where they're like, should a small business run ads? Most people now are saying no, or at least consult with a media buyer that knows what they're doing first to get the planning, to get the strategy going forward, because it is changing so much. So some of those changes are, I kind of mentioned the data and that lag there. So what's going to happen now is, currently Facebook can basically track data. If I show you an ad and then 28 days later you end up buying, that ad can still show you that Mike ended up buying this button up or whatnot. Now, if he opts out, originally they were saying that was going to go down to a 7-day window. If he's an iPhone user and he opted out, but it's actually going to go down to a 1-day window now. So if he doesn't end up buying, then I don't even see that data. So I don't even know he bought it. I don't know that ad worked. The other side of it is the data is going, so the window of attribution is going down to be a shorter. So you're going to lose purchases in the long run. So that's going to affect more of the companies that are selling higher price products instead of the cheaper ones, because a lot of cheaper products, people don't usually think about them too much. They just buy them. They don't think about them too much. But if it's $100, $150 or more type product, you think about it more. You need remarketing and more messaging, and then you might buy it after you see more examples of reviews and that kind of thing. The other side of it is the data lag. So now actually what's going to happen too is Apple's going to say, oh, let's say we did get a purchase. We're not even going to tell Facebook they got the purchase until 3 days later, just because we want to, kind of thing. So that's another, and they're randomizing it too. So it can be up to, it could be instant, but it could be up to 3 days later. So now with a lot of like bigger e-commerce companies and things like that, where people might wanted to scale really quickly, or they might have wanted done like a Black Friday sale where it's a big 1-day sale. You're not even actually going to know how well you did in terms of looking at the Facebook Ads Manager and the data there until up to 3 days later. So you're not even going to be able to scale, which before you could do, every other day you might scale and look at how the data looks. Now it's like you have to wait almost a week to see how it did to then go and scale. So there's been things, even I've done stuff where I've turned off an ad and then I go back to look at all my metrics and I'm like, oh, that ad actually did better. I just didn't wait long enough. So even stuff like that, now you have to wait longer. And then the third side of it, well, there's probably a fourth side too, but the third side is the, let me think here, the targeting side of it. So if you say you don't want to be tracked anymore, then I can't necessarily remarket to you. So that disappears. Again, if I have a higher price product, that's where I might be doing all of my sales in the middle or the bottom of funnel remarketing. That's going to sort of disappear in a lot of ways now too. So that's going to be affected. And then sort of the fourth thing is, because all these changes are happening, Facebook's definitely going to have to change their algorithms. They're going to have to change how they're reporting the data. So they're going to get into looking at how they can shift their algorithms to perform better for what we want to happen. And then they're going to do the other side of it, which is kind of statistical modeling of saying, we think you've got X amount of purchases based on our modeling. So it's a big change in a lot of ways.
It's a big, like the thing that was beautiful about the advertising, like with Facebook or any of them, is that the accuracy, right? Like you can at least see, here's exactly what happened, when it happened, how it happened, and what the result was. And that's where there's just a lag in it now. And like you said, which is crucial. 3 days might not sound like a lot, but when you're talking about like Black Friday to what you do on Cyber Monday because of Black Friday, that's a huge thing. When you have an event, that's a huge thing. With anything that you do, especially with brands that are spending a lot more money, for it, that could make a big difference. I know we've had differences between, $100,000 to $1 million ROI from ads, and it was because of the constant shifts and narrowing in to make sure it's right to somebody. Like, we're looking at it every day and seeing how to make adjustments. It's that minute, like, to see that 1 degree of difference. It's going to be, is it hot or boiling, right? Like, and so that does make a huge difference for brands when you're doing advertising. So I agree with you 100% on a couple things. All the things, but one thing that you hit on for sure is, will it make sense for small business to advertise? And I don't know, depending on what we're marketing, unless you're going to keep it on Facebook, honestly, and do the boost in a certain way, which I hate boost because it costs so much and it's kind of fluffy at the end of the day, versus having something super targeted, or do a very short window type of campaign and just do different ones to where, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to remarket unless we can kind of figure it out. But the big thing is, it's not necessarily what do we take away or what do we tweak in the ads, to really just kind of take a step back, in my opinion, and look at the big picture, and something we've been talking about for a long time is own your own data. Like, get to a point to where we can build things organically. Even more of a reason, if you've been reliant, or brands have been reliant on selling based upon ads and getting in front of people, to really be deliberate and owning your own data. What I mean by that is owning your audience and how things are showing up, so you can get into the pockets of where you already know people are at, and make sure that you can have campaigns that are really getting shared for you organically and sustainably. So making sure that you have that home base where your content's going to live, your sales can take place, where you have that data and you can drill down in that data, and then know, based upon the systems that you have in your site, okay, who's doing what, how are they doing it, what's the flow like on our site, and then how can we maximize to get more and more sales organically first, and make that your main priority, not, rely on ads, because this is just the Facebook side. But like I said, there's rumblings of things that are changing with Google too. So it's really about now that big tech, unfortunately, like, we love them, but it's a love-hate kind of relationship, because the big battleground is data. And because we're getting these products for free, we are the product that's being sold. And this is a money grab. And as much as they say it's about privacy and it feels all warm and fuzzy, which will then cause, unfortunately, more people to opt into it, because they're feeling like, oh, they care about my privacy. I want to keep my privacy. Well, what that means, again, for you is this is happening. 2, yes, will you maybe not be able to be remarketed, which, do any of us love advertising? No. However, when you check that box and you're clicking that, it's not that you're not going to be marketed to. It's that now you're going to be marketed to for potentially products that you don't give a crap about. Now, Tony might be seeing wedding dresses or something that, he may not even care about at the end of the day. So I guess if I have to choose between being marketed to and somebody tracking me with something that I'm actually going to want, or something that people are guessing, I would much rather be marketed to for something I want, because advertising is not going away. That's how they make money to sustain the products. So it's frustrating to the sense of now we have to just pivot to see how we can rework it. But that's what we've been working on. I know, Tony, you've been working on our own little sheet to kind of drill down on what this looks like for clients, but also to take a step back and say, okay, we can't rely on ads. You just can't. And we've always said that.
There you go.
Build in your sustainable business in an organic way and use ads as the amplifier, so it's not going to be a detriment to the business at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think I have some friends that are email marketers, and they're so happy with all this, because they're just like, email marketing is back and it's not going anywhere. And that's like you're saying there. Own your organic, but at the same time too, email marketing is going to be huge now, SMS text marketing, all that kind of stuff. Because now, even if we run an ad now, maybe now it's more for let's get an email and then market to them kind of on the back end, and then we can track that stuff better. So yeah, it is changing a lot of.
It can be personalized even more.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's changing a lot. There's a lot of different potential solutions, but it is still evolving in a lot of ways. So it's sort of like, your solutions are going to be based on your business. You can do things like what's called looking at the media efficiency ratio. So instead of maybe looking at your actual Facebook metrics, you're looking at like the Shopify side of things if you're an e-commerce store, or like your the Google Analytics or something like that. Or if if you're capturing leads in a certain program, instead just look at that and see, okay, I ran ads, I spent this much dollars this day, how many leads did I get in? And so then looking at your kind of your website server side data instead of waiting for that Facebook data. There's ways like that, so you can kind of step back to look at it. But it's sort of, people are still trying to figure out how is Facebook going to get affected by all of this, and how accurate is it going to be? How crazy are ads going to be? How much are we going to have to change things there? Because what you can do in like an old way that people used to do remarketing is you can basically say, let's remarket, because Facebook is still going to have the data on the platform. You can basically do like a video campaign, run that and say, okay, let's remarket to people that watched 50% or 75% of that video. So there's tactics like that that still might be relevant and might be good to use. It's just waiting now to see what is going to happen, and then figuring out what's the best approach for kind of each client going forward.
It's very interesting, isn't it? I really liked what Jessica you said about just how and Tony, you confirmed it then kind of with your email marketing friend's house, the some of those other platforms, methods that maybe we didn't use or we moved away from a little bit, are going to have a resurgence in that. And then there's new ones, like I think of SMS, marketing, and particularly the engagement method there, where you can have that conversation. So I think it's just another step in being aware of what the opportunities are, being aware of what the possibilities are, and how you work those pieces out.
And a realization that with the good comes the bad. Like, I think all of us could agree, at least I get a crap ton of really spammy text messages, right? And really spammy emails where people are buying lists, they're buying text messages. And I know this isn't about this, but it kind of all ties back in. I was actually commenting on a page in the Social Media Masterminds group in regards to people, clients saying, you know what, I've heard there was a Facebook documentary out about Facebook Famous, and they're asking about if they should buy, bots to grow their awareness, right, on their brand page, make it look like, oh, this person has it figured out. They have the social proof, if you will, on there. So, taking that easy road out, or easy road, I guess, to get to the result that they're looking for. So what I had commented back is, no, please don't, just don't. Yeah. And I want to say that and preface that with all things that you may be considering if you're going down a route of, okay, I'm going to go to SMS, or now I'm going to go to email, but I need to catch up quickly, or what have you. Don't take that route, because here's why. In the comment that I made back to the person that was asking the question, I'm like, okay, just consider for a moment they do that. One, it's not going to get engagement. Vanity metrics don't, they fill your like counts, but they don't fill your bank account. One. Two, what happens when anything that's spam or that's shady or not good tactics, like, it gets scrubbed eventually. And plus it annoys people. So when it gets scrubbed, though, as Facebook and Instagram are already removing, and Twitter even, all of them are trying to scrub to find, like, bots, for example. What's going to happen when the person's account that grew to this amount gets scrubbed, and they've been talking about growing to 1 million followers or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it gets scrubbed and they have to explain why they have 1,000, right? Like, that's going to look really crappy. And what's going to happen is that then they're, probably going to be like, well, my advertiser let me do it, or what have you. So that's one, that you don't want to be caught looking bad and it have a detriment to your brand account. The same thing is true with text messaging. And you're just like, well, I just sent out the message, I didn't realize who they were sending it to, or email. You don't want it to have a negative impact. So whatever you decide to do with a situation like this, it's maybe going to require us to work a little bit harder and smarter to do so just that way. Do what's right, not what's easy with this. And I highly recommend, as Tony was talking about, whether you're educating yourself, or you're consulting with someone else, or you're working and hiring somebody that does ethically get it and can help you out, that you go that route. Because regardless of all this changes that are happening, the biggest thing that you want to make sure of is, one, that you're aware of what's going on. Two, that you have a plan and you're not reliant on paid anything.
Right.
or not earned anything. And 3, that you have some trusted people that you can learn from, that can help you out, or that you bring on to help make sure that it's a smooth transition. Because I see that many times when times get tough or something like this happens, where unfortunately there's like a rise of people that are like, I can solve it for you magically, by doing X, Y, or Z, and it ends up having this snowball bad effect at the end of the day. So that was just my little soapbox moment of telling you, please don't fall for it. I promise it's not worth it. And make sure that you're aware of what's going on and that you ethically can choose to do what's right, not what's easy when all this comes to play. Because the people that are doing that, they're the ones that win. Like, look at all the brands that grew in 2020 and the brands that are doing it right, that have like this, stamina of saying, nope, we're going to keep on with the right path because it's going to pay out much larger at the end of the day. It's just, think of it as investing. You're investing and then you get the huge rewards at the end of that investment, So
there you go. There you go.
Very well said.
Sorry. Box moment. But thank you. Buongiorno, David. I love it. And Marissa says, P.S. nice background. But she also said, Tony does online ads. Tony does all the things, said Facebook user. I don't know who that is. But yes, Tony does all the things. He's a wealth of information. We're so, just elated to have him on the team and this wealth of info, because this is what's important. And this is what not only, like we said, it's not, even though we're talking about Facebook, it's not just a Facebook thing, right? It's going to expand. It affects all the data. And it's not just an advertising thing, it's a consumer thing as well. So I love, Tony, that you touched on, even on your website, like adding in that tracking there. So the key is still to do tracking and see where you can take the data and have it tell a story for you, so you can personalize your approach back to how you're still going to show up to help bring people through that buyer's journey, through knowing about you, through the awareness, to considering working with you, especially if it's a bigger purchase that takes a little bit of time, a few extra touches, and then ultimately the conversion. Because the last thing you want is to be marketing to somebody that's already a user of yours, a buyer of yours, and be like, hey, learn about this thing. That's so frustrating. Like, I've had it happen to me where they've called me wanting to talk to me about their product. And I was like, yeah, it sounds great. It sounds so great. I've had it for 9 years. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So
and one of the things too is, which I think I've touched on it a little bit, but the good part about this is all of advertisers are going through it at the same time. And the other thing that I don't know if I've said enough, but there's a lot of unknowns still. So know that there's not like a very straightforward answer, do this, do that. It's really like, it's a wave coming. We know it's coming and we're going to deal with it as it happens. There's methods that I already mentioned that we can kind of look at and see, but still when it comes to how Facebook is performing, I might have this idea of, I'll just check Shopify data and how much I've spent on Facebook. Facebook might just be completely screwed up though for a while with its algorithm stuff too. So it's a wave that's coming, but just know that there's not like a very clear answer. There are steps, and maybe we can post the link or whatnot, but Facebook's released things that you can do, like verify your business domain, set up your different conversion events, because basically what's going to happen too is if Mike, let's say, opts out, but then he goes to a website and he ends up, let's say, like adding to cart. What you're going to be able to do now is actually sort out your event priorities. So if purchase is obviously usually the highest priority, if he doesn't purchase, it won't even show that. If he views an item, but then let's say he adds it to cart, if that add to cart is higher than viewing the item, then it'll say he added to cart. But it might not show he viewed the item. So it's even that's changing, which I don't know if I explained that very well, but
no, that's
so
good.
there's a lot of steps.
You hit on something like, if somebody does want the links, and I should have mentioned this early on, but I was so like in it right now. But if you want the recap of this show, as well as those extra links that Tony is mentioning to take you there, so you can deep dive in, you can learn about the updates. We'll make sure we keep the blogs updated, and you can find out when new ones come out. Just type the word recap in the comments where you're watching this. Now, if you type it in Facebook where you're watching this with us on the Now Marketing Group page, it'll automatically open up a messenger marketing bot, our Nowie bot, if you will, that'll say, hey, what's your email? We want to make sure you have it. And then it'll send you directly the recap of the show. If you mention recap anywhere else, we'll make sure we get the amazing Agora Pulse filter in there that we can follow up with you on a way to get the blog sent to your inbox tomorrow morning. So just type the word recap, all one word, in the comments, and we'll make sure that it gets to you.
Good stuff. And more so just because it keeps changing rapidly. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. So that recap, be able to follow that's going to be important.
Amen. Yeah. And so, Tony, I know you've had long days and nights studying this, keeping our team up to date with the changes that are happening. I so appreciate you and your wealth of information. So when new things come out or if people have questions, what's the best way of getting in touch with you?
I pretty much always say my Twitter, which is @TonyDoesAds, just because that's where I really network with all the other media buyers. That's where I'm going to. If I see an article, if I see the latest from a Snapchat rep or whatever, I'm retweeting it there and I'm commenting on it. So if you really want the latest, as it happens, and see who I'm interacting with there, that's really invested in all of this, I would say Twitter is probably the number one area to reach out or just to look into for iOS stuff. And in general, if you want the latest, yeah, @TonyDoesAds. And yeah, I would say in general for most Facebook advertising stuff, when it comes to updates, Twitter is going to be really powerful. Just like it is for news, a lot of advertisers are there talking about what's working, what they're hearing latest when it comes to iOS 14. So yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to let everyone know here, if you on Clubhouse, if you've already joined, you're an iOS user, talking all things iOS, I guess today, we did begin a Clubhouse group called Relationship ROI. So it's still relevant to magnet marketers, but what it allows us to do is things change, evolve. We can jump in on that group and go live instantly, bringing in fabulous guests and wealth of information like Tony to talk about the changes as they go live. So if you are on Clubhouse and you want to participate or be aware of that, still type recap in here. We'll make sure we give you an alert, but also just hop over to Clubhouse, and Relationship ROI is the name of the group. If you can't find it, you can find me, and it's under the groups there as well. But we'll be hosting more groups just related to these changes, because so much has happened rapidly. You got Instagram making, all of them. Last week we were talking about lots of changes, and there's even more that continue to roll out. So I want to make sure you're aware of and in the know of what's happening. So, Mike, any last finishing thoughts on iOS 14?
Be aware of those other platforms, your other spaces that you need to be sharpening. Yeah, at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think not enough people are talking about the other platforms. Other advertisers like me are, but I don't think there's been very much talk about Google, YouTube, those platforms that are going to be changing too. Even analytics and UTM parameters, those might even actually be affected by this too. That's still an unknown right now, but there's word that those could potentially be affected as well. So there could be bigger implications than just ads. So just keep your eye on it, definitely.
Yeah. And we'll make sure to keep you abreast of what's happening. But as Tony said, yeah, there's whisperings, there's rumblings in the inner circles. I don't know. We just hear things. That's one beautiful thing that we've been talking about Clubhouse, is just being able to listen to other advertisers, learn to people that are in it, right? And hear some of the talks of what's changing, as well as, just the platforms themselves kind of alluding to things to come. But there does seem to be this little power play with data. So it'll be interesting how this all shakes out. But at the end of the day, again, keep doing what's right, and you'll never go wrong with you and your brand, and making sure that you are not relying on anything else to grow your business, but you as the brand, the organically, and it definitely will have a sustainable long-term growth factor to that. But thank you so much, Tony and Mike, for taking some time out to add some value this week, talking about iOS 14. I hope for all of you that it was very, very helpful at listening in, and just being aware of what's to come and why you might start seeing some ad changes change results, and as well, to give you a heads up on some things that potentially you can do, or at least reach out to someone to try to help out, to make sure that it's not a big shock and all and cry or whatever there is when it all happens. But again, could be next week, could be in spring. We don't know. They don't give us deadlines. They don't work with deadlines. They do what they want because they can. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in with us this week on Magnet Marketers Training Tuesday Live. We'll be back here next Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, I hope all of you have an amazing rest of your week.
Thanks, Jody, Jessica. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.